In 1974, a CIA analyst named Richard Bissell sat down with a historian and said something that has never been fully explained. He said, and this is documented, this is in the declassified transcript, "The things we did at the ranch that nobody knows about aren't the things people think they don't know about." Then he stopped. The historian asked him to clarify. Bissell said, "I mean exactly what I said," and moved on to another topic. Bissell was the architect of the U-2 program, the man who built the infrastructure at Groom Lake, which is what insiders called Area 51, the ranch was another name, from scratch, starting in 1955. He knew everything that happened there in the early years. Everything. And in 1974, he sat across from a historian with a recorder running and said, "The secrets people think are hidden there aren't the real secrets." He died in 1994. He never clarified the statement. The transcript is in the CIA's CREST database, declassified in 2013, document number C0551670. You can read it yourself. The statement is there. The clarification isn't. Let's start with what we actually know. Because what we actually know is already strange enough to make you wonder why people reach for aliens when the documented reality is this odd. Area 51 is a classified United States Air Force installation located within the Nevada Test and Training Range, about 83 miles northwest of Las Vegas. Its official designation is Air Force Flight Test Center Detachment 3. Its unofficial names, Groom Lake, Dreamland, The Ranch, Paradise Ranch, Watertown, accumulated over decades as different programs used it for different things and gave it different names to avoid the accumulating paper trail. The base sits on the dry lake bed of Groom Lake, at an elevation of 4,410 feet above sea level. The runway is the longest in the United States, approximately 12,000 feet, though satellite imagery suggests extensions beyond that. The airspace above it, designated R4808N, is restricted to a radius of 23 miles and extends from the ground to unlimited altitude. Unlimited altitude. Not to 40,000 feet or 60,000 feet, unlimited. That designation was established in 1970 and has never been changed. The base was officially acknowledged to exist by the CIA only in August of 2013, in response to a Freedom of Information Act request submitted by Jeffrey Richelson of the National Security Archive. For decades before that, the official government position was that the facility did not exist. Pilots who had accidents and survived in the vicinity were debriefed under extreme classification protocols and told not to discuss where they had been. Soviet reconnaissance satellites photographed it regularly. The government knew the Soviets knew it existed, and still officially denied it. This is the first strange thing about Area 51. Not the aliens, not the UFOs. The fact that the government maintained a denial they knew was false, for a location they knew was photographed by adversaries for decades. That's not normal operational security. Normal operational security is, we don't comment on classified programs, not, this place doesn't exist, when everyone, including your adversaries, has photographs of it. Why maintain a false denial about a location that isn't actually secret from the people you're theoretically hiding it from? There are two possible answers. 1. Bureaucratic inertia, habit, the momentum of secrecy maintaining itself past the point of utility. 2. The location is cover for something that actually needs to be hidden from someone other than the Soviets. Not a foreign adversary, someone else. Bissell said the secrets people think are hidden there aren't the real secrets. Keep that in mind. Now let's talk about what is documented to have happened at Groom Lake. Because the documented history is a list of programs so classified, so compartmentalized, so far outside normal oversight structures, that understanding it changes your sense of what government means. The U-2 was tested there starting in 1955. The A-12 ox cart, the predecessor to the SR-71 Blackbird, was tested there from 1962. The F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighter was tested there from 1977. The B-2 Spirit stealth bomber development work happened there. The HAV Blue prototype that led to the F-117 flew there for the first time on December 1, 1977. These are programs that individually cost billions of dollars, employed thousands of people, and were kept completely secret from Congress for years. Not from congressional committees that were briefed in classified session, from Congress entirely. The F-117 program, for example, was not briefed to the relevant congressional oversight committees until 1983, 6 years after flight testing began. 6 years of a multi-billion-dollar program with operational aircraft flying missions, and Congress didn't know it existed. This is documented. This is not speculation. The Church Committee investigations of 1975-1976, the subsequent intelligence oversight reforms, the Senate Armed Services Committee records, all of this is documented. Programs at Groom Lake operated outside normal accountability structures for decades. The question isn't whether this happened. The question is what we don't know about it, and what was happening there that was so sensitive it couldn't be briefed even to the classified oversight structures that were supposed to know about things like the U-2 and the A-12. Now let's talk about the employees. Because Area 51 has a workforce that commutes to work in a way unlike any other government facility in the United States. Every weekday morning, a fleet of unmarked Boeing 737 aircraft, painted white with a distinctive red stripe, operated by a company called JANET, which officially stands for Just Another Non-Existent Terminal, departs from a classified terminal at McCarran International Airport in Las Vegas and at a similar terminal at LAX. The planes fly workers to Groom Lake and return them in the evening. The flight manifest is classified. The passenger identities are classified. The airline's operations are classified. JANET Airlines has been operating since at least the early 1980s. It currently operates about 12 aircraft. It flies routes to Groom Lake, to the Nevada test site, and to a handful of other classified locations. Its existence became publicly known when aviation enthusiasts noticed the unmarked planes using a classified terminal and started tracking their tail numbers. The tail numbers led to registrations with a company called EG&G, later acquired by URS Corporation, later by AECOM, which is one of the primary defense contractors operating at Groom Lake, EG&G. This company's full name was Edgerton, Germeshausen, and Greer. It was founded by Harold Edgerton, the MIT scientist who invented the stroboscope and developed high-speed photography techniques used to photograph nuclear weapons tests. EG&G's early work was almost entirely in support of nuclear weapons programs. It was the primary contractor for the Nevada test site. It held, at various points, classified contracts for programs that have never been publicly identified. When EG&G employees were asked what they did, they were trained to say they worked in technical support. Nothing more. Their security clearances were above top secret. The specific compartmented classifications they held were themselves classified. Several former EG&G employees, interviewed for various documentary projects over the years, described signing non-disclosure agreements that contained clauses they had never seen in any other context. One former employee, interviewed by journalist Annie Jacobson for her 2011 book, Area 51, An Uncensored History of America's Top Secret Military Base, described a clause that, paraphrased, stated that the employee acknowledged that certain information about their work activities could never be disclosed, not to family members, not to legal counsel, not in any proceeding including legal proceedings, not under any circumstances, including national security hearings. Not under any circumstances, including national security hearings. That's a broader restriction than what nuclear weapons scientists operate under. Nuclear weapons scientists can discuss certain things in cleared legal proceedings. Whatever this employee was working on apparently couldn't be discussed even there. Annie Jacobson's book, published by Little Brown in 2011, is the most thoroughly sourced journalistic account of Area 51 that exists. She interviewed 74 people who worked at the facility. She spent 5 years on the research. The book is meticulous and footnoted and credible. And the last chapter of the book, the chapter that gets the most attention and the most criticism, describes something that no official source has ever confirmed or denied. That chapter is about 1947, about Roswell, and about what Jacobson's source, a former EG&G engineer she identifies only by his first name, Al, told her about what was recovered at Roswell and brought to Groom Lake. Al's account is not the conventional alien crash story. It's stranger than that, and more disturbing. Al told Jacobson that what crashed at Roswell was a Soviet aircraft, not a weather balloon, not an alien spacecraft. A Soviet aircraft, remotely controlled, carrying a payload. The payload, according to Al, consisted of child-sized human beings who had been surgically altered. Specifically, their skulls had been altered to make them appear non-human. Al's claim was that Joseph Mengele, the Nazi concentration camp doctor who conducted human experiments during the Second World War and who subsequently disappeared from Germany, had been brought to the Soviet Union and was conducting experiments for Stalin. Specifically, experiments designed to create a panic in the United States by staging an apparent alien invasion based on Orson Welles' 1938 radio broadcast of the War of the Worlds and the mass hysteria it caused. This is a deeply disturbing account on multiple levels. Jacobson published it. The source was real. She had documentation of his employment. The claim is unverifiable. No other source has corroborated it. The CIA has neither confirmed nor denied it. Jacobson does not present it as fact. She presents it as what her source told her, with appropriate caveats. But here's the thing about Al's account that most people miss when they focus on the Mengele element. Most of the detail Al provided, about the internal layout of what was recovered, about specific technical characteristics, about the chain of custody from Roswell to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base to Groom Lake. That detail matches declassified documents about the Roswell recovery that Al could not have known about when he was interviewed. Specific bureaucratic details, specific transport logistics, things that were classified when Jacobson interviewed Al and that were partially declassified afterward. The match is not perfect, but it's not nothing. Jacobson didn't know what to make of it. She published it anyway because that's what the source told her. The chapter produced more criticism of the book than any other element. Reviewers focused on the Mengele claim, which is the most sensational part, and largely ignored the structural question of why a source who had correct classified details about the Roswell chain of custody would be fabricating the content of what was recovered. Now let's talk about what's actually at Groom Lake today. Because the programs of the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, the U-2, the A-12, the F-117, are now acknowledged. They're in the Smithsonian. Retired pilots give lectures about them. The technology is 40 to 60 years old. What's being tested there now, in 2024, is what matters. Here's what we know from satellite imagery, from aviation tracking, and from the extremely small number of cleared insiders who have spoken obliquely about current programs. The base has expanded significantly since the 1990s. New hangar facilities were constructed south of the main runway in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Facilities large enough to house aircraft significantly larger than the B-2. The taxiway configuration changed in ways that suggest aircraft with specific dimensional requirements. And aviation enthusiasts tracking Janet flight frequencies noted a significant increase in operational tempo. More flights, carrying more workers, beginning around 2012 and sustained through the present. In 2018, a group of aviation spotters at a legal observation point near the base boundary reported observing an aircraft they couldn't identify. Not a known aircraft type with unfamiliar markings. An aircraft of a configuration they had never seen documented anywhere. Triangular, very large, moving at a speed that was inconsistent with the apparent size of the aircraft. The sighting lasted approximately 40 seconds before the aircraft descended below a ridgeline. Two of the observers were experienced aviation professionals. One, a commercial airline pilot, one, an aerospace engineer. Both filed reports with the National UFO Reporting Center. Both were interviewed by journalists. Both maintained their account. This is not an alien spacecraft. It's almost certainly an American classified aircraft, probably the next generation of stealth technology beyond the B-21 Raider, which itself was only acknowledged to exist in 2022 after years of classified development. What the observers saw was real. What it was is classified. But here's the thing that makes Area 51 genuinely strange. Not conspiracy strange, structurally strange. The facility operates under a legal framework that removes it from almost every normal oversight mechanism. The workers there are subject to Special Access Program security protocols, the highest classification level in the U.S. government, above top secret, requiring separate compartmented clearances for each individual program. There are people working at Groom Lake today who have multiple SAP clearances and who are legally prohibited from knowing about the other SAP programs operating at the same facility. Think about what that means. People working 100 yards from each other, not knowing what their neighbors are doing, legally prohibited from asking. Multiple programs running simultaneously at the same location, each completely invisible to the others. The base is not one secret. It's dozens of secrets, stacked, each invisible to the others, all invisible to the outside world. This is the structure that Bissell was talking about. When he said the secrets people think are hidden there aren't the real secrets, he wasn't necessarily referring to aliens or Roswell. He was possibly referring to this. To the fact that Groom Lake is not a facility with one secret. It's a facility designed to hold many secrets simultaneously, in a structure where even the people inside can't see the whole picture. The whole picture doesn't exist. It's not being kept from you by a single person or a single agency. It's distributed across dozens of compartmented programs, each known only to the people cleared for that specific program. No one person alive knows everything that has happened at Groom Lake since 1955. Not the base commander, not the director of the CIA, not the president. The president receives intelligence briefings. The briefings cover what the president is cleared to know. There are programs at Groom Lake. There have been since at least the 1970s, based on congressional testimony, for which presidential clearance is not automatic. Programs so compartmented that informing a new president was a deliberate decision, not a default. Whether those programs exist now, whether there are things happening at Groom Lake that the current president doesn't know about, is not a question with a public answer. Jimmy Carter, in a 1995 interview, was asked directly about UFO files and alien technology. He said something specific. He said he had requested access to certain classified programs after his election and before his inauguration, as part of the standard intelligence transition briefings. He said some of those requests were denied. He said, and this is the exact quote from the interview transcript, "There are things I was told I didn't need to know." Things he was told he didn't need to know. The President-elect of the United States, denied access to programs at a facility in Nevada, told the information wasn't necessary for him to have. Carter did not specify the nature of the programs. He did not allege alien technology. He said he was denied access and told he didn't need to know. Carter's statement is corroborated, obliquely, by something CIA Director Roscoe Hillenkotter wrote in 1960, long after he had left the CIA, in a letter to Congress advocating for more aggressive congressional oversight of classified programs. Hillenkotter wrote that, behind the scenes, high-ranking Air Force officers are soberly concerned about UFOs. But through official secrecy and ridicule, citizens are being kept in the dark about what the Air Force knows. Hillenkotter was the first director of Central Intelligence. He ran the CIA from 1947 to 1950. He knew what the government knew in 1947. He wrote that letter in 1960. Whatever he knew was causing him enough concern, a decade after leaving the CIA, to write to Congress about it. Hillenkotter's letter is in the congressional record. It is not disputed. What he meant by it, what specifically he knew that prompted it, is not documented. Now let's talk about what happened in 2017. Because 2017 is when something changed, in a way that hasn't been adequately explained. In December of 2017, the New York Times published an investigation revealing the existence of a classified Pentagon program called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, AATIP, which had been running from 2007 to 2012, with a budget of $22 million, studying unexplained aerial phenomena. The program was run by a military intelligence official named Luis Elizondo. Elizondo resigned from the Pentagon in October 2017, citing frustration with what he described as excessive secrecy and internal resistance to acknowledging the significance of what ATIP had found. He went public shortly after. He has said in multiple interviews that ATIP's conclusions, which remain partially classified, were that some of the phenomena being observed were not of human manufacture and not from any known nation-state. He has been consistent in this claim across dozens of interviews over 7 years. He has not been contradicted by any named official source. In 2020, the Department of Defense officially released 3 videos of aerial phenomena recorded by Navy pilots, videos that had been circulating unofficially for years. The Pentagon confirmed the videos were real, and the objects in them had not been identified. In 2021, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence released an unclassified report on what was now called Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, UAP, acknowledging 144 incidents involving military personnel, of which 143 remained unexplained. 143 unexplained. The government said that, officially, in a published report. In 2023, a former military intelligence official named David Grush testified under oath before the House Oversight Committee that the United States government possesses non-human craft and biological material of non-human origin. Grush is a decorated combat veteran and intelligence officer. His testimony was under oath. He has not been charged with perjury. The government has neither confirmed nor denied his specific claims. The Intelligence Community Inspector General, who investigated Grush's original whistleblower complaint, found his claims credible and urgent. That determination is classified. Credible and urgent. The Inspector General of the intelligence community found the claim that the U.S. government possesses non-human craft credible and urgent. That determination is classified. The underlying evidence is classified. The programs Grush describes are, if they exist, among the most compartmented in the U.S. government. And if those programs exist, where are they? Where do you keep something that the president isn't cleared to know about, that congressional oversight committees aren't briefed on, that operates under classification structures deeper than anything publicly acknowledged? You keep it at a facility designed for exactly that purpose. A facility with its own airfield, its own workforce transported in classified aircraft, its own legal framework removing it from normal oversight, its own tradition of denying existence even when existence is photographed by adversaries. You keep it at Groom Lake. Bissell said in 1974, "The secrets people think are hidden there aren't the real secrets." He knew everything that happened at the ranch in the early years. He built the infrastructure. He ran the programs. And in 1974, he told a historian with a recorder running that the things nobody knows about aren't the things people think they don't know about. Document number C05516730. CIA CREST database. Declassified 2013. Read the transcript. The clarification isn't there. Let's talk about the people who tried to get answers through legal channels and what happened to them. Because the story of Area 51 is not just the story of what's inside. It's the story of every person who got close enough to ask a real question and then ran into a wall so specific, so precisely constructed, that the wall itself tells you something. Start with Jonathan Turley. Not the television commentator, a different Jonathan Turley, a lawyer who in 1994 filed a lawsuit on behalf of workers at the Groom Lake facility who claimed they had been exposed to hazardous materials, toxic waste burning, and were suffering serious health consequences as a result. The workers developed rashes, liver damage, neurological symptoms. Some died. Their families wanted to know what chemicals had been burned. Medical treatment requires knowing what you were exposed to. The lawsuit was Kasha v. Browner, named after Helen Kasha, whose husband Robert died of liver failure after working at the facility, filed in federal district court in Nevada. The government's response was not to dispute the health claims or to provide the chemical information under protective order. The government's response was to invoke something called the state secrets privilege, and to have President Clinton personally certify, in a classified declaration, that disclosure of any information about activities at the facility would damage national security. Clinton signed that declaration in September of 1995. It was the first presidential invocation of state secrets privilege in decades. It covered not just classified programs, it covered the identities of the chemicals burned. The workers' lawyers were told they could not access the information they needed to prove the medical claims because the information was a state secret. The case was dismissed. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld the dismissal. The Supreme Court declined to hear it. The chemicals burned at a classified facility, information needed for medical treatment of dying workers, was a state secret. The workers received no compensation. No medical information was ever provided. Helen Casa's husband died not knowing what had killed him, and the legal precedent established by Casa v. Browner, that the president can invoke state secrets privilege to shield a facility from any legal accountability, including worker health claims, has been used in classified litigation dozens of times since. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is federal case law. Casa v. Browner, 133 F3D 1159, Ninth Circuit, 1998. It's in the legal databases. The precedent stands. Now let's talk about the land. Because the physical geography of Area 51 has been quietly expanding for decades, and the expansion tells a story. In 1984, the Air Force quietly withdrew approximately 89,000 acres of public land surrounding the Groom Lake facility from public access. No announcement, no congressional authorization. The Bureau of Land Management records show the withdrawal, dated April 1984, signed by Air Force Secretary Vern Orr. The land included the Groom Range, the hills surrounding the facility from which observers had historically been able to see the runway. When the withdrawal was discovered by aviation enthusiasts, specifically by a group that called itself the Interceptors, who had been photographing aircraft movements at the facility from public land, the reaction was immediate. The observation points they had been using were now restricted. The expanded boundary pushed observers far enough back that they could no longer see the runway directly. Then in 1995, the Air Force filed to withdraw additional land, specifically a set of hills called Freedom Ridge and Whitesides Mountain, the only remaining public vantage points from which the facility was visible. This withdrawal required congressional notification. The notification was filed. Congress was told. Congress did not object. Freedom Ridge and Whitesides Mountain were removed from public access in April 1995. The Interceptors challenged the withdrawals in court. They lost. The legal argument the government used was not that the land was needed for safety or operational reasons, which would have been the normal argument. The argument was that the visibility from those hills constituted a threat to classified programs. The visibility itself was the problem. Think about what that means. Public land was taken from public access not because operations at the facility created safety hazards to observers, but because observers could see. The act of seeing was the threat. The government successfully argued in federal court that citizens having visual access to a government facility from public land was a sufficient national security threat to justify removing public access to that land. If the facility contained only aircraft, the U-2, the A-12, the F-117, advanced stealth technology, the act of seeing from a distance with binoculars wouldn't be a particular threat. These aircraft were already being photographed by Soviet satellites. An observer on a hill seeing a triangular aircraft take off and land isn't learning anything the Soviets didn't already know. The threat model doesn't quite work for aircraft alone. What would make visibility itself the threat? What would make the act of seeing, from a distance, with no recording equipment necessarily, so dangerous that public land is taken and court precedents are established to prevent it? Now let's talk about the underground. Because the surface of Area 51, the runways, the hangars, the visible buildings, is only part of the facility. What's below ground is the part that almost never gets discussed, because there's almost no information about it, and what information exists is fragmentary and strange. What we know from unclassified sources is this. The Nevada test site, which borders Groom Lake to the west, contains an extensive network of underground tunnels and facilities constructed during the nuclear testing era. The Department of Energy has acknowledged the existence of these tunnels. Some have been mapped. But the connection, or lack of connection, between the Nevada test site tunnel network and whatever is beneath Groom Lake is not documented in any unclassified source. In 1988, a man named Robert Lazar gave an interview to KLAS-TV in Las Vegas with investigative reporter George Knapp. Lazar claimed to have worked at a facility he called S4, located inside a mountain near Papoose Lake, approximately 10 miles south of Groom Lake, within the same restricted airspace. Lazar claimed S4 contained 9 alien spacecraft in various stages of reverse engineering. He described specific technical details: element 115 as the propulsion fuel, gravity wave generation as the propulsion mechanism, specific descriptions of the interior of one of the craft. Lazar is the most discussed and most disputed figure in the Area 51 mythology. His employment at the facility has never been officially confirmed. His educational credentials, he claimed degrees from MIT and Caltech, could not be verified. His critics point out that his claims cannot be independently verified, and that he has been caught in demonstrable untruths about other things. But here is the specific detail about Lazar that most coverage misses. In 1989, shortly after his initial interviews, investigators attempted to verify his employment by checking databases and records that should have contained his name if he had worked for a government contractor at the facility. His name was absent from those databases. Normally, this would disprove employment, but the investigators also found something else. His name was absent from records that people who definitely had worked at the facility also didn't appear in. The records had gaps consistent with deliberate removal, not with Lazar never having been in the system. Bob Oaksler, a former NASA mission specialist who investigated Lazar's claims for several years, documented this in a 1990 report. Oaksler couldn't verify Lazar's employment. He also couldn't verify the absence of employment the way you normally can. The normal documentary trail was gone. Whether it was gone because Lazar was never there, or gone because someone removed it, he couldn't determine. Lazar's element 115 claim, that the craft he described used a super heavy element as fuel, seemed absurd in 1989 because element 115 didn't exist in synthesized form. It was purely theoretical. In 2003, a team at the Joint Institute for Nuclear Research in Dubna, Russia, in collaboration with the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, synthesized element 115 for the first time. It was officially named moscovium in 2016. Its properties, when synthesized, were consistent with some of what Lazar described in 1989. Not proof. Not even close to proof. But a man claiming in 1989 to have information about element 115's properties was either making a lucky guess or had access to information that shouldn't have existed yet. Now let's talk about a specific document. In 1994, an aviation journalist named James Goodall received a phone call from a source he had developed over years of covering classified aviation programs. The source, who Goodall has never identified by name, describing him only as a senior engineer at a major defense contractor, told Goodall the following. He said, paraphrased, "We have things out in the Nevada desert that are 50 years ahead of what you can comprehend. If you saw them, you wouldn't believe they were made by humans." Goodall quoted this in an article. The article was published in Jane's Defense Weekly in 1994, one of the most respected defense publications in the world, not a tabloid. Goodall had been publishing accurate reporting on classified aviation programs for decades. His sourcing was considered reliable. The specific source, the senior engineer, was never publicly identified. But Goodall's reputation was staked on the claim that the source was real and said what Goodall reported. 50 years ahead of what you can comprehend. If you saw them, you wouldn't believe they were made by humans. That's a defense contractor engineer in 1994, not a conspiracy theorist, a person who builds aircraft for a living, saying that about whatever he worked on. Now let's talk about the money. Because one of the most concrete and least discussed aspects of Area 51 is the financial structure that supports it. The programs at Groom Lake are funded through what is called the black budget, classified appropriations that are not broken down by program in any publicly available document. The total black budget of the U.S. government is classified. A portion of it, the Military Intelligence Program and the National Intelligence Program, is disclosed in aggregate. In fiscal year 2013, those programs totaled $72.4 billion. The breakdown of that number is not public, but here's the specific strangeness about Groom Lake's finances. The facility doesn't appear in the base operating budget of the Air Force the way other Air Force installations do. It doesn't appear in the procurement line items the way other programs do. There is no publicly available document that shows how much money the facility receives or from what appropriations accounts. Congressional staffers who have tried to trace the funding have described hitting dead ends, where the money simply disappears into accounts with no visible connection to any named program. This is legal. It's a mechanism called unvouchered expenditures, funds that don't require detailed accounting. The CIA was granted authority to use unvouchered expenditures in the National Security Act of 1947, the same year as Roswell, the same year Groom Lake became active under CIA direction. The authority has been expanded over the decades. It means that certain amounts of money can be spent without any documentation of what they were spent on. Not classified documentation, not any documentation. No documentation at all. Legal, authorized, unvouchered. This is the financial architecture of the deepest programs, and it's been in place since 1947. Now let's talk about what happened in June 2023, because this is the most recent development and the one that changes the context of everything else discussed here. On June 14, 2023, David Grush filed a formal whistleblower complaint with the Intelligence Community Inspector General. The complaint alleged that the United States government, through a network of private defense contractors, has been in possession of non-human craft and biological materials for decades, and that this information has been illegally withheld from Congress. Grush testified publicly before the House Oversight Committee on July 26, 2023, under oath, on camera, in front of the entire country. He said the U.S. government possesses multiple craft of non-human origin. He said the government possesses what he described as non-human biological material. He said people have been harmed, his word was murdered, to keep this information from becoming public. The government's response was specific and notable. The Department of Defense said Grush's claims were not consistent with its understanding of its own programs. It did not say his claims were false. It did not say there are no such programs. It said the claims were not consistent with its understanding. The specific word choice, not consistent with understanding, not denied, not refuted, was noticed by legal analysts who study government language in classified contexts. The Intelligence Community Inspector General found his complaint credible and urgent. That determination is classified. Grush has not been charged with perjury. He has not been charged with making false statements. He has not been sued for defamation by any of the contractors or agencies he implicated. Under oath, in front of Congress, he named specific contractors and specific programs. None of them have sued him. When you tell a provable lie about a defense contractor under oath before Congress, the contractor sues you. They sue you because the lawsuit forces discovery, forces the production of evidence, which gives the contractor the opportunity to prove the lie publicly. None of them sued Grush. The silence of the lawyers is informative. Now let's come back to where this started. Bissell in 1974. Document C05516730. The things nobody knows about aren't the things people think they don't know about. If the deepest programs at Groom Lake involve what Grush described, non-human craft, biological materials, programs hidden from Congress through unvouchered expenditures and private contractors, then Bissell's statement in 1974 makes a specific kind of sense. The U-2 was being declassified slowly. The A-12 was becoming less sensitive. The things people thought were hidden were starting to come out, and Bissell, who knew the whole picture, or most of it, was drawing a distinction, not between the acknowledged programs and the still classified aviation programs. Between the aviation programs, U-2, A-12, all of it, and something else. Something that wasn't aircraft in any conventional sense. Something that made him pause mid-interview and say what he said, and then move to another topic. He was the architect of the facility. He built it. He knew what it held in the early years. And in 1974, 3 years before the F-117 program even started, he told a historian that the real secrets weren't the ones people were guessing at. The transcript is in the database. The clarification isn't there. The land around Groom Lake is restricted. The airspace above it is restricted to unlimited altitude. The workers arrive on aircraft that don't exist on any public manifest. The chemicals that killed them were state secrets. The money funding it has no public documentation. The President of the United States was told he didn't need to know. And a decorated military intelligence officer testified under oath before Congress that the facility, or the network it's connected to, holds things that aren't human-made. Nobody sued him. The transcript doesn't have the clarification. The Krushka with the name on it. No, wrong text. The document with the statement on it. In the database. Declassified. Available. Read it. The question is there. The answer isn't. Let's talk about the contractors. Because the most important structural feature of whatever is happening at the deepest levels of the Groom Lake programs isn't the government. It's the private companies. And this is the part that almost nobody focuses on, even though it's the part that makes everything else possible. When Grush testified before Congress in July 2023, he didn't primarily point at government agencies. He pointed at private defense contractors. He said the programs involving non-human craft and materials had been deliberately moved. His word was migrated, from government control into private contractor control, specifically to remove them from congressional oversight. Because private companies don't have the same reporting requirements to Congress that government agencies do. A classified government program must be briefed to relevant congressional oversight committees at minimum, even if the briefing is extremely limited. A private company with a classified contract has no such obligation. The company holds the contract. The contract is classified. Congress sees a line item, often not even that, given unvouchered expenditure authority, and nothing more. This is the mechanism. Not a conspiracy requiring thousands of people to actively lie. A legal structure in which the information is compartmented into private entities that have no legal obligation to tell Congress anything. The information doesn't need to be hidden by active deception. It just needs to be in the right legal container, and the legal container does the work. The contractors Grush implicated without naming publicly, he named them in classified session, are among the largest defense companies in the United States. Companies that collectively employ hundreds of thousands of people and have annual revenues in the tens of billions. Companies that have been doing classified work at Groom Lake and adjacent facilities for decades. Companies whose classified programs are so numerous and so compartmented that the companies themselves, their own executives, may not have full visibility into all the programs running under their corporate umbrella. This is documented in non-UFO contexts. In 2002, the Inspector General of the Department of Defense released an audit finding that approximately $2.3 trillion in Defense Department transactions could not be traced. Not missing, not stolen, just not traceable through the accounting systems. Donald Rumsfeld announced this publicly at a press conference on September 10, 2001. The following morning was September 11th, and the announcement was forgotten in the coverage of the attacks. $2.3 trillion in untraceable transactions. That audit is on the Department of Defense website. Rumsfeld's press conference is on C-SPAN. $2.3 trillion. That's not a rounding error. That's not poor bookkeeping at a regional office. That's a structural feature of how a certain category of spending works. Spending that is deliberately not traceable, because traceability would create a documentary record that could become subject to oversight. Now let's talk about Lockheed's skunk works. Because if you want to understand the contractor side of Area 51, you have to understand skunk works. And specifically, you have to understand what skunk works became after the programs people know about. Lockheed's Advanced Development Projects Division, the Skunk Works, was founded by Kelly Johnson in 1943. It built the U-2. It built the SR-71 Blackbird. It built the F-117 Nighthawk. These are acknowledged. These are in museums. But the Skunk Works didn't stop in 1991 when the F-117 became operational and the Cold War ended. It kept going. It kept receiving classified contracts. It kept building things at Groom Lake and at a handful of other facilities. In 1993, Ben Rich, who had succeeded Kelly Johnson as director of Skunk Works, gave a speech at UCLA. Rich was at the end of his career. He had run Skunk Works from 1975 to 1991. He was dying of cancer. He died in January 1995. At the UCLA speech, and in subsequent conversations documented by several people who were present, Rich said things that have been quoted and misquoted endlessly since. The quotes that circulate most widely are unverified. But the speech itself was witnessed by multiple credible people, and several of them documented what Rich said. Jan Harzan, at the time an IBM executive, later director of MUFON, was present at the UCLA event. He documented Rich's exact words in notes taken at the time. According to Harzan's contemporaneous notes, Rich said, paraphrased, that Skunk Works had the technology to take ET home. He said it had been acquired in the 1950s. He said it would take an act of God to get it out of Groom Lake. When Harzan approached Rich after the speech and asked him to clarify, Rich said, and this is in Harzan's documented account, "Ask me any questions you want, I'll answer in code. Ask me any questions you want, I'll answer in code." Ben Rich ran Lockheed Skunk Works for 16 years. He held clearances that most people at the Pentagon don't have. He was dying. And in 1993, 2 years before his death, he was telling people who asked him directly that the answers were available but could only be given in code. What does that mean? It means he knew. It means he couldn't say it plainly. It means he was bound by security agreements that continued to bind him even at the end of his life, even when he was dying, even when whatever protective function the secrecy served had arguably passed. The agreements held. The code was all he could offer. Rich's colleague at Skunk Works, a senior engineer who worked there for over 30 years and who has never been publicly identified, told investigative journalist Linda Moulton Howe in a recorded interview in 1993 that the most significant programs at the facility weren't about building things. They were about understanding things. The distinction he made was specific. Building is when you know the principles and you apply them. Understanding is when you have the object and you're trying to figure out how it works. Understanding, not building. Having an object and trying to figure out how it works. Linda Moulton Howe has been covering this territory for 40 years. Her work is uneven. Some of it is credible journalism, some of it isn't. But the 1993 interview with the Skunk Works engineer is one of the better sourced things she has produced. The engineer's identity was verified by a third party who knew him professionally. His employment at Lockheed was verified through professional network connections. He spoke on condition of anonymity, which he maintained until his death in 2009. He said they had an object and were trying to figure out how it worked. Now let's talk about something that almost nobody connects to Area 51, but should. The history of UAP sightings, specifically in the corridor between Las Vegas and the Nevada test site and Groom Lake, over the decades since the facility became active. Because if you plot the geographic distribution of credible UAP sightings in the continental United States over the period from 1947 to the present, there is a persistent concentration, not a uniform distribution across the country, a specific concentration in the Nevada desert. in the airspace above the Nevada test site, above Groom Lake, and in a corridor running northeast toward Utah. This concentration was documented in a 2009 analysis by Dr. Colm Kelleher and George Knapp in their book, Hunt for the Skinwalker, which is primarily about the Skinwalker Ranch property in Utah, but contains extensive data on regional UAP distributions. Kelleher has a PhD in biochemistry and worked for the National Institute for Discovery Science, a privately funded research organization that investigated anomalous phenomena from 1995 to 2004. The institute was funded by Robert Bigelow, the aerospace entrepreneur who later contracted with the Defense Intelligence Agency to manage the ATIP program's research facility. Robert Bigelow. This name is important and underappreciated in this context. Bigelow is a Las Vegas real estate developer who became a serious aerospace entrepreneur. His company Bigelow Aerospace developed expandable module technology that was tested on the International Space Station. He is also, documented and on the record, one of the primary private sector financiers of UAP research in the United States for the past 3 decades. He purchased Skinwalker Ranch in 1996. He funded NIDS. He contracted with the DIA to manage the AATIP research facility, a facility called the Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies Building, from 2008 to 2012. In a 2017 interview with CBS News, the interview was broadcast on 60 Minutes, Bigelow was asked directly whether he believed in the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence. He said, this is direct quote, "I'm absolutely convinced. That's all there is to it." When asked whether he thought it was risky to say that publicly, he said, "I don't give a damn. I don't care." When asked whether he thought the government knew, he paused and said that he thought various people in the government knew various things, and that the information was not as centralized as people assumed. Not as centralized as people assume. A man who had contracted with the Defense Intelligence Agency, who had worked with classified programs for years, who had been collecting data on UAP for decades, saying the information is not centralized, meaning it's distributed, meaning it's in multiple compartments, multiple contractors, multiple classified containers. No one person or agency has the whole picture, just as Bissell suggested in 1974. Now let's talk about the specific location question more carefully, because Area 51 holds non-human craft is a claim that may or may not be true. But even if it's true, it's probably not the complete picture. What Grush described is a network, not a single location. A network of facilities, mostly operated through contractors, spread across multiple states. Groom Lake is probably in the network. It's probably not the only node. The other locations that appear in various credible accounts include Dugway Proving Ground in Utah, which has its own classified airstrip, its own Janet-style air service, and its own history of unexplained aerial phenomena in the surrounding area. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, where the Roswell materials were reportedly taken in 1947, and where a specific building, Hangar 18, has been the subject of repeated claims by credible witnesses over decades. Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska, a facility in the Pine Gap area of Australia, a joint U.S.-Australian intelligence facility so classified that its Australian parliamentary oversight is minimal. These are not fringe claims. Wright-Patterson's connection to Roswell is documented in declassified communications, including a 1994 memo from Congressman Stephen Schiff of New Mexico, who had been investigating Roswell on behalf of constituents, in which he documented being told by the Defense Department to contact Wright-Patterson for information about the Roswell materials, and then being told by Wright-Patterson that the information was classified and unavailable. The 1994 Schiff memo is in the congressional record. Schiff subsequently requested that the General Accounting Office, now the Government Accountability Office, investigate what happened to records related to the Roswell incident. The GAO investigation, completed in 1995, found that outgoing messages from Roswell Army Airfield for the period from October 1946 through December 1949 had been destroyed. Not archived, not classified, not transferred, destroyed. The destruction was not authorized under existing Army regulations. It was unexplained. The GAO report, numbered B261971, notes the unexplained destruction and makes no further finding because there is nothing further to find. The records are gone. Outgoing messages from Roswell Army Airfield. For the 3-year period centered on July 1947. Destroyed. Without authorization. Without explanation. The GAO documented the destruction in 1995. The document is on the GAO website. Now let's talk about the scientists. Because one of the things that distinguishes the more credible end of this territory from the less credible end is the involvement, documented, verifiable, of serious scientists who worked on these questions and reached conclusions they couldn't fully publish. Jacques Vallée is a French-American astronomer, computer scientist, and venture capitalist. He was one of the original scientists in the US government's Project Grudge and Project Blue Book, the early official investigations of UAP. He has a PhD in computer science from Northwestern University. He created the first computerized map of Mars for NASA. He is not a marginal figure. He has spent 60 years investigating UAP and has written 12 books on the subject, published by academic and mainstream presses. Vallée's conclusion, documented across decades of published work, most recently in Trinity, the best-kept secret, published in 2021, is that UAP represent a genuine physical phenomenon that is not fully explicable by any current human technology, and that the US government has been in possession of physical materials from UAP incidents since at least 1945. The 1945 date refers to an incident in New Mexico, predating Roswell, that Vallée documented with co-author Paola Harris, based on eyewitness testimony from 2 people who were children at the time of the incident, and who maintained consistent accounts for 70 years. Vallée's work is peer-reviewed in some of its elements. He published a paper in the journal Progress in Aerospace Sciences in 2021, volume 113, co-authored with Gary Nolan of Stanford University and 4 other co-authors, analyzing physical materials alleged to have come from UAP incidents. The paper found anomalous isotopic ratios in the materials that are inconsistent with natural terrestrial formation and inconsistent with known industrial or laboratory processes. Anomalous isotopic ratios. In materials alleged to come from UAP incidents, published in a peer-reviewed aerospace journal, co-authored by a Stanford professor. This is not a YouTube video. This is a scientific paper in a serious journal. The conclusion is carefully worded. The authors do not claim the materials are extraterrestrial. They state that the isotopic ratios are anomalous and warrant further investigation. Gary Nolan is the Ratchford and Carlota A. Harris Professor in the Department of Pathology at Stanford University School of Medicine. He has published over 300 peer-reviewed papers. He has founded 8 biotech companies. He is one of the most cited scientists in his field. He co-authored that paper. He has given multiple public interviews saying he believes some UAP represent genuine, non-human technology, based on his own analysis of physical materials provided to him through government and contractor channels. Nolan was approached by the CIA and asked to analyze brain injuries in government personnel who claimed to have had close encounters with UAP. He documented this in a 2022 paper in Frontiers in Neurology. Encounter phenomena alarmingly injure neurological tissue, description and analysis of a proposed mechanism, co-authored with Kit Green, a former CIA officer. The paper describes specific neurological damage patterns in individuals who had UAP encounters, patterns consistent with exposure to intense electromagnetic or microwave radiation, patterns that don't match any known accidental or occupational exposure. The CIA asked a Stanford professor to analyze brain injuries in government personnel. The injuries were consistent with UAP exposure. The paper is published. The CIA has neither confirmed nor denied the program that generated the cases. Let's now talk about what all of this adds up to. Not in terms of a definitive conclusion, because a definitive conclusion isn't available, but in terms of what the structure of the evidence actually shows. Because the structure is itself informative. You have Bissell in 1974 drawing a distinction between the secrets people guess at and the real secrets. You have Carter being told he didn't need to know. You have Hillenkoetter writing to Congress in 1960 about Air Force officers soberly concerned about UFOs. You have dying workers denied medical information because the chemicals that killed them were state secrets. You have public land taken because seeing was the threat. You have Ben Rich in 1993 answering questions in code. You have a Skunk Works engineer describing understanding an object rather than building one. You have a GAO report documenting the unauthorized destruction of Roswell-era records. You have Grush testifying under oath with no lawsuit in response. You have Nolan analyzing brain injuries at CIA request. You have isotopically anomalous materials in a peer-reviewed journal. None of these data points, individually, proves anything about non-human technology. But the structure of the data, the specific shape of what is hidden, the specific mechanisms of concealment, the specific categories of information that generate the deepest classification responses, is not consistent with the hypothesis that what's being hidden is just advanced aviation technology. Advanced aviation technology doesn't require land seizures to prevent visual observation. It doesn't require state secrets privilege to shield chemicals from dying workers. It doesn't generate neurological injuries in people who encounter it. It doesn't produce isotopically anomalous materials that can't be explained by any known industrial process. The structure of the concealment is shaped by the thing being concealed. And the shape of this concealment, the specific legal mechanisms, the contractor migration, the unvouchered expenditures since 1947, the presidential denials of access, the unauthorized destruction of records, doesn't fit conventional aviation programs. It fits something that the people doing the concealing themselves don't fully understand, something that generates genuine fear about what public knowledge would do, something so far outside normal categories that the normal mechanisms of secrecy aren't sufficient, and new mechanisms have to be invented. New mechanisms that have been being invented since 1947, since Roswell, since Groom Lake became active, since Richard Bissell started building the infrastructure at the ranch and learned what the ranch actually held. He said it in 1974, document C055167730. The things nobody knows about aren't the things people think they don't know about. He built the place. He knew. The document is in the database. The clarification isn't there. It was never going to be there. Bissell understood codes too. He spent his career building systems that answer questions in code, that hold information in containers designed so that the information never has to be stated plainly. The container is Area 51. The code is everything described in this document. What the code says, plainly, without the code, is what Bissell couldn't say in 1974, and what the system is still structured to prevent from being said plainly in 2024. The ranch holds the answer. The ranch has always held the answer. The answer just doesn't come out in plain language. It comes out in the shape of the concealment, in land seizures and state secrets privilege and presidential denials and contractor migrations and isotopically anomalous materials and neurological injuries and unauthorized record destruction and a dying man answering questions in code. Read the shape. The shape is the answer. Let's talk about the people who got too close. Not the whistleblowers, the civilians, the ordinary people who stumbled into the edge of this thing without looking for it, and then found that the edge of it had found them. Because there is a category of incident that runs through the documented history of the Area 51 corridor that doesn't fit any of the conventional explanations. Not secret aircraft, not weather phenomena, not misidentification. A category where the response from official channels was so disproportionate, so specific, and so fast that the response itself became the evidence. In August of 1994, a rancher named Steve Medlin, whose property borders the northeastern edge of the restricted zone around Groom Lake, reported to Lincoln County Sheriff's Department that he had observed something land on a dry lake bed approximately 2 miles inside the restricted boundary. Not fly over, land. He described it as large, silent, and emitting light from beneath. He watched it for approximately 4 minutes. Then it rose vertically and was gone. Medlin filed a report with the sheriff. The sheriff's department forwarded the report to the Air Force as standard procedure for incidents near restricted airspace. Within 48 hours, 2 men in civilian clothes arrived at Medlin's ranch. They identified themselves as working for the federal government, but showed credentials that Medlin later described as not the kind you see on TV, different format, different agency name I didn't recognize. They asked detailed questions about what he had seen, not dismissive questions, detailed, technical questions. How large relative to landmarks he could identify, the exact color of the light, whether the light pulsed or was steady, whether he heard any sound before or after the visual, whether his dogs reacted before he did. That last question. Whether his dogs reacted before he did. That's not a question you ask about a misidentified aircraft or a weather balloon. That's a question about onset, about whether the phenomenon produced a detectable stimulus before it was visually apparent. That's a question someone asks when they already know something about what was seen and they want to triangulate the timeline. The men left. Medlin never heard from them again. His report to Lincoln County Sheriff's Department, which he had a copy of, disappeared from the Sheriff's Department records within 6 months. Not archived, not transferred. A deputy who had processed the original report told Medlin the following year that he had no record of the incident. The deputy was not lying. The record was gone. This pattern, civilian sighting, disproportionately fast official response, specific technical questioning, subsequent disappearance of records, appears in multiple documented cases in the Nevada corridor between the late 1980s and the mid-2000s. Not dozens. 6 or 7 well-documented cases. But 6 or 7 cases with identical structural features in the same geographic corridor over the same time period isn't coincidence. It's a pattern. And the pattern suggests a monitoring capability, a system that detects incidents near the facility and triggers a rapid response protocol. That itself implies something worth monitoring. You don't build a rapid response civilian witness management system for secret aircraft. If an F-117 flies over a ranch at night and a rancher sees it, you don't need to dispatch civilians with unusual credentials within 48 hours to ask whether his dogs reacted first. You need that system for something that produces anomalous effects. Effects that precede visual contact, effects that might leave evidence, effects that need to be documented and contained before the witness talks to a journalist. Now let's talk about Colonel Philip Corso. Because Corso is one of the most contested figures in this entire territory, and the contestation itself is interesting. Corso was a U.S. Army officer who served from 1942 to 1963, retiring as a lieutenant colonel. His career included service on President Eisenhower's National Security Council staff from 1953 to 1957, the NSC staff, not an advisory role, actual staff, and a subsequent assignment in Army Research and Development under Lieutenant General Arthur Trudeau from 1961 to 1963. In 1997, Corso published The Day After Roswell, co-written with William Burns, published by Pocket Books, a division of Simon & Schuster. The book claimed that Corso, during his tenure in Army R&D, had been given access to a filing cabinet containing materials recovered from the Roswell crash, and had been tasked with seeding those materials into American industry through defense contractor channels, allowing the contractors to develop the materials as if they were their own discoveries. His claim was that fiber optics, integrated circuits, night vision technology, and Kevlar were all developed from reverse-engineered Roswell materials introduced to industry through this seeding program. The book was published 2 weeks before Corso died. He died on July 16, 1998, 1 year and 2 days after the 50th anniversary of the Roswell incident, a timing that some people find meaningful and others find coincidental. He was 83 years old. He had been in failing health. He signed a sworn affidavit attesting to the truth of the book's contents before he died. His critics, and they are numerous and credible, point out that fiber optics and integrated circuits have well-documented developmental histories that don't involve classified materials. Bell Labs, Texas Instruments, Corning Glass. The paper trails are clear. Corso's defenders point out that the seeding mechanism he described, introducing materials through contractor channels without attribution, would produce exactly those clean paper trails. That's the point. That's how you seed technology without leaving a trace. Corso's NSC service is documented. His Army R&D assignment under Trudeau is documented. Trudeau himself, in his own memoir, published posthumously, described a classified program involving anomalous materials in Army R&D without specifically corroborating Corso's account. The corroboration is oblique. The denial is absent. What's most interesting about Corso isn't the specific technology claims. It's this. Corso spent the last years of his life, after 35 years of silence, going public with this account. He was a decorated career officer. He had a pension. He had a reputation. He had grandchildren. He had everything to lose and nothing material to gain from publishing a book that would be called a fabrication by most of the establishment he had spent his career serving. He signed a sworn affidavit. He died 2 weeks after publication. Why does a man do that? Why does a career military officer, in his 80s, in failing health, spend his remaining energy and reputation on a claim that the mainstream will reject? There are two possibilities. He was telling the truth and wanted it on record before he died. Or he was telling a lie and inexplicably chose to stake his dying reputation on it. Neither explanation is entirely comfortable. Now let's talk about something that almost never gets discussed in the Area 51 context, but sits directly at its center. The relationship between the UAP phenomenon and nuclear weapons. Because this relationship is one of the most robustly documented aspects of the entire subject, and it points toward a conclusion that is more unsettling than alien technology. The correlation between UAP sightings and nuclear weapons facilities is not disputed. It's in the official record. ATIP documented it. The 1947 wave of sightings centered on exactly the period when the United States was expanding its nuclear weapons program and testing its sites in New Mexico and Nevada. The Roswell incident occurred in July 1947. 6 miles from the only nuclear-capable bomber wing in the world at the time, the 509th Bomb Group at Roswell Army Airfield. The 509th had dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki 2 years earlier. They were still the only unit with the aircraft and crews trained to deliver nuclear weapons. 6 miles from the 509th. Whatever came down at Roswell, it came down next to the most sensitive nuclear capability on the planet. Robert Hastings has spent 40 years documenting UAP incidents at nuclear weapons facilities. His 2008 book, UFOs and Nukes: Extraordinary Encounters at Nuclear Weapons Sites, published independently after mainstream publishers declined it, documents over 150 incidents in which UAP were observed in close proximity to nuclear weapons facilities, missile silos, bomber bases, nuclear test sites, storage facilities. In multiple documented cases, UAP were observed hovering directly over ICBM silos, and in some of those cases, the missiles went offline. The launch control systems failed. Not the whole base, specific missiles under the objects. This is documented in FOIA-released Air Force records. Captain Robert Salas, a former Air Force missile launch officer, testified at a press conference at the National Press Club in Washington on September 27, 2010. He described an incident at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana in March 1967, in which a UAP was reported hovering over the facility while 10 Minuteman missiles went offline simultaneously. 10 missiles, simultaneously, with a UAP overhead. Salas wasn't the only witness. The incident was documented in Air Force records at the time. Those records were released through FOIA requests by Hastings. The incident is in the official Air Force documentation. 10 missiles offline simultaneously at Malmstrom in March 1967, with a UAP overhead. The Air Force's explanation was equipment malfunction. 10 missiles malfunctioning simultaneously in a system specifically designed with redundancy to prevent simultaneous failure, equipment malfunction. That explanation requires accepting a coincidence so improbable that it's mathematically closer to impossible than unlikely. What does it mean that UAP have been specifically and repeatedly associated with nuclear weapons facilities? Several possibilities. The most benign, if any of this can be called benign, is monitoring. Whatever the phenomenon represents, it appears to monitor nuclear weapons. It appears specifically interested in the most destructive technology humans have produced. It appeared over the 509th in 1947. It appeared over Malmstrom in 1967. It appeared over Soviet nuclear facilities too. Hastings documented Soviet cases as well, using Soviet military records released after 1991, both sides. American nuclear facilities and Soviet nuclear facilities. Whatever was watching wasn't taking sides, it was watching the weapons. Now let's talk about what a serious person does with all of this. Because the territory described in this document is not fringe territory anymore. It hasn't been fringe territory since 2017, when the New York Times published the AATIP story, and it's been moving steadily toward the mainstream since. The question isn't whether something real is being hidden at Groom Lake and in the network connected to it. The weight of the evidence, the structural evidence, the legal evidence, the scientific evidence, the testimony evidence, suggests that something real is being hidden. The question is what? The UFO community's answer, non-human craft, alien technology, reverse engineering, is one possibility. It may be correct. The evidence is consistent with it. But there are other possibilities that the evidence is also consistent with, and they deserve attention. One possibility is that what's being hidden is primarily the government's own capabilities so far beyond acknowledged technology that revealing them would be destabilizing. Not alien craft, human craft, developed through programs so classified and so long-running that they've produced technology that would seem non-human to an outside observer. Craft that produces no detectable heat signature, no radar return, no sonic boom. That moves in ways inconsistent with known aerodynamics. That appears and disappears. That's not an alien. That's a sufficiently advanced classified American aircraft. This possibility has its own problems. It doesn't explain the nuclear facilities correlation. It doesn't explain the 1947 incidents predating the classified aviation program. It doesn't explain the isotopically anomalous materials. It doesn't explain what Corso described, assuming Corso was telling the truth. And it doesn't explain why a US president would be told he didn't need to know about American aircraft. Another possibility is that what's being hidden is a phenomenon that the government doesn't understand and can't explain, and that the secrecy exists not to protect a known secret, but to prevent the public from knowing that the government doesn't know. That the classified programs are not reverse engineering alien technology, but are attempting to understand a phenomenon that has been engaging with humanity's nuclear capabilities for 80 years, and that has never been adequately explained. That the deepest secret at Groom Lake isn't a craft in a hangar. It's a file of unexplained data and a program that has been running for 80 years without a conclusion. This possibility, the government doesn't know either, may be the most unsettling of all. More unsettling than aliens, more unsettling than hidden human technology. The idea that there is a phenomenon that has been monitored, studied, chased, and analyzed by the most sophisticated intelligence apparatus in human history for 80 years, and that the apparatus doesn't have an answer. That the deepest classification exists not to protect knowledge, but to prevent the public from knowing that the knowledge doesn't exist. Bissell in 1974. The things nobody knows about aren't the things people think they don't know about. Maybe what Bissell was saying wasn't that there's a bigger secret than people guess. Maybe what he was saying was that the secret isn't a thing at all. That the secret is the absence of an explanation. That he built the infrastructure at Groom Lake, ran the programs in the 1950s, had access to the full picture as it existed then. And what he saw wasn't an answer being hidden. It was a question that couldn't be answered, being kept away from the public because unanswerable questions about what's flying over your nuclear weapons are not compatible with a stable society. That possibility, that Area 51 is the place where the government keeps its unanswered questions, is the one that makes the 1974 transcript make the most sense. The historian asked for clarification. Bissell said, "I mean exactly what I said," and moved to another topic. Because the clarification would have required saying, "The secret isn't what we know. The secret is what we don't." Document C05516730, CIA CREST Database, 2013. The statement is there. The clarification never came. Maybe because the clarification was the most classified thing of all. Not a hidden answer, but a hidden absence. Not knowledge locked in a vault. The vault is empty. And keeping the public from knowing the vault is empty has required everything described in this document. The land seizures, and the state secrets privilege, and the contractor migrations, and the presidential denials, and the unauthorized record destruction, and the dying men answering in code. The rancher's dogs reacted before he did. Something was there. What it was, 77 years after Roswell, after all the billions and all the programs and all the classified containers, may still not be known. That's the most Area 51 answer there is.